following announcement has been paid for by the new Howell order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So it's no secret that Bill Belichick's time in New England seems to be coming to an end. Now, the question as to when it will come to an end is one that has been running rampant after the Patriots loss over in Germany on Sunday. They have a bye week. If they were going to make a change, seems like now would be the time. However, I don't foresee Belichick being fired in season. That seems a bit disrespectful to one of the best coaches in NFL history and a guy that has brought you 6 Super Bowl championships. I just don't see this marriage ending in that manner. However, after the season is done, different story. I do see a mutual parting of ways, but the Patriots were moving on whether Belichick was ready to move on or not. So to make it sound amicable, we'll say a mutual parting of ways. But they were kicking his ass out regardless of whether he was ready to leave or not. So it begs the question, is Belichick done with football overall? And the answer is a resounding no. This is a football lifer. You know, he doesn't have anything else other to do. There are no other leisure activities. This guy grew up around football. His dad was a coach. He was in coaching from the time that he could, read a NFL defense, and he's been off and running ever since, right? So this is all he knows. And he's not going to stop until he can't do it anymore. So we don't think that this is the end of the road for him. We just think the end of the road in New England is near. So the question then becomes, well, where is he going? Because he's not a guy that has to take a year off. Similar to Andy Reid, when he got fired from Philadelphia, he landed on his feet in Kansas City immediately, and the rest is history. Now, Andy Reid was probably 15 years younger than Bill Belichick when all of this was transpiring, but still, same thing, right? When you're that kind of a coach, generally, you don't have to sit out a year and wait unless there are no opportunities that you're interested in. Now, the Patriots are going to try to play hardball because Belichick technically is under contract and they don't have to do anything, but they don't want him there as the coach anymore. So if I'm a prospective team, I'm not giving them anything for Bill Belichick because this isn't a situation where, it is free agency, right? Belichick doesn't have to take your job, your position if you're interested, but I'm not giving you draft capital for a guy that you're going to ultimately get rid of, okay? That's not how this is going to work. And I don't want him bad enough, if I'm a prospective team, to trade you draft capital to get him here and take on whatever contract you signed him to. I'm not doing that. So for all intents and purposes, I think the Patriots are stuck in terms of trying to get something out of this whole ordeal, but suit yourself. I don't care about any of that stuff. I care about Washington's side of all of this. Now, for those of you familiar, Pat McAfee packed his things up and took his show onto ESPN, where he has a daily show, and just like he used to have one on YouTube, now it's on ESPN, and he has guests every week. Aaron Rodgers is a usual guest, and so is former NFL quarterback Dan Orlovsky, who is a great analyst for ESPN right now. And Orlovsky said this past, today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, so he said it today, right, on his show that, rumors are running rampant about Bill Belichick's demise in New England and that his time is nearing. It's pretty much up. But he's going to land on his feet somewhere, and Orlovsky even went as far as to say, yeah, I've been hearing that he's, going to land on his feet somewhere else, and I've been hearing where, and it's pretty much already a done deal. Interesting. Now, of course, he would not say where that was, and we've already heard rumors of Washington being interested, and this got all of us up in an uproar, me included. I did a whole video, just a week or two ago saying, Belichick to Washington is the stupidest thing, ever, something to that effect. Most of us don't want any parts of Bill Belichick because he's everything in terms of, age and, you know, everything that Ron Rivera has represented. Just let's strip away the winning. Okay? Strip away the winning. He represents everything that Ron Rivera has been for the last 4 years, which is what we are desperately running away from. He's old. We feel like the game has passed him by. He's not an energetic guy. There's a certain way that he likes to do things. It won't be fun. I know winning trumps having fun, but who doesn't like to watch what the San Francisco 49ers are doing, right? Guys dancing and all that shit goes out the window if Belichick shows up. And I know for some of you, you don't give a shit about all of that. We like fun. As a fan base, players like fun. As a fan base, we like to see players having fun. It's a part of what makes being a fan fun. Now, winning makes it all fun, right? And we don't have to go through what the players have to go through to win. We just see the final product, and if they're winning, all that other shit takes care of itself. I just know that we're done with the arms folded on the sideline. And not that Belichick is doing that, but Belichick's old. He puts his challenge flag in his sock and just stupid, dumb shit that you just go, bro, what are you, 17 years old? What are we doing here? Or in this case, what are you, 77 years old? Who hides anything in their sock anymore? That's like me telling you, hey, man, first of all, who carries cash? That's number one. But if you do, hey, hide your cash in your sock. Who does that? Somebody that's 77 years old, right? We want to be so far removed from the old guy, get off my lawn, that we're so turned off by that at this point, right? Now, I will say, the biggest issue that we think we're going to have moving forward, and the biggest issue that Belichick clearly has, is he doesn't know how to win without a quarterback. Now, you could argue, who does know how to win without a quarterback? Good question. Not a lot of great coaches in the league won without a great quarterback. So that's not a huge knock on Belichick, because you have to have a quarterback to win in this league. But, the whole discussion about Brady versus Belichick, who was more responsible, I think we've answered that question already, right? However, another thing that we don't want any parts of, Belichick is such a huge, larger-than-life figure within the realm of the NFL spectrum that wherever he goes, the assumption is he's not just your head coach, he's /GM. We don't want that either. We just went through that with Ronald Rivera. We don't want anybody having dual roles here in Washington. There needs to be a hierarchy. GM, okay, who answers to the ownership group. Head coach, who answers to the GM, who was picked by said GM, by the way. Coach, who then fills out his staff, and maybe that head coach has to take on Eric Bieniemy. We'll see. He may not have to. He may come in here, be an offensive-minded guy, do away with Eric Bieniemy, scrub the whole coaching staff clean, pick his own staff, and go about it that way, and that's fine too. I'd hate to see Sam have to learn another offense, but he's already proven to us he's smart enough to do that and thrive in it after 6-7 weeks of getting comfortable. He's already shown us he's capable of doing that. I don't want him to have to keep doing this, but if you want to nip it in the bud once and for all, just pull off the Band-Aid. Get him another guy that's going to be here for the next decade, and let's ride, right? That's what you hope, whatever the case may be. Belichick is really good defensively, schematically, okay? And so you say what you want. We all feel like that's going to be the biggest issue, is cleaning this defense up, shining it up, and turning it into a winning outfit. Belichick can do that very quickly, okay? But you're not going to get him to come here to be your defensive coordinator. He's coming to be your head coach /GM, which we want no parts of. There's so many things fundamentally wrong with Bill Belichick to Washington. I personally think that it would be more like a place like, say, Vegas, and they've gone through that whole experiment. But remember, Mark Davis is the one owner in the NFL right now that I can say that truly wants nothing to do with the football side of the operation. He just wants to be the owner. He wants to allow someone to handle all the rest of the stuff so he can just focus in on being a damn owner. He wants nothing to do with the football side of things. That's why he hired John Gruden to a 10-year contract and made him the de facto head coach, GM, coach-centric. You pick everything, and I'll just leave you alone. 10 years, $100 million, you figure the shit out. Okay? Then he went and he said, all right, full Belichickian tree. We'll go get the GM, Dave Ziegler. We'll go get the coach, Josh McDaniels. You guys handle that shit. I'll stay over here in my lane, right? I could see him going down that road again with Bill Belichick, saying, hey, here it is. I did it with Gruden. I'll do it with you. Here's your situation. I'm done. You figure it out, right? I don't see that happening. I think Antonio Pierce is going to be their new head coach, but we'll see, right? A lot of football still left to be played. There's the Chargers, right? They're going to probably fire their GM, Tom Telesco, more likely than not. If they don't win this season, and the way that it's trending, they're going to end up, probably being a disappointing, 8-9, 9-8, barely missed the playoffs type of team. And then there'll be questions, and Telesco will be gone. Brandon Staley will be gone. And then they could already have their head coach. And this is usually the route. This is why I don't think it's Los Angeles. They're pretty cheap when it comes to coaches. I don't know what Belichick is going to demand in terms of pay. I would assume it's going to be a lot of money. Thus, that rules out the Los Angeles Chargers. They don't spend that kind of bread on coaches. Hence, I look at the offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, as a guy that they brought in specifically for this purpose. If Brandon Staley doesn't work out, we already got the guy in-house. We don't have to give Justin Herbert another offensive coordinator. He can just transition, smoothly into the head coaching gig. We move forward, right? That could be an option as well. Don't rule out the Chargers, but I don't think it's Los Angeles. There are going to be other opportunities too. Like, there won't just be 3 vacancies at the end of the season. Okay, there'll be 6 or 7, like there always is. But then there's Washington, right? And remember, wherever he goes, it's probably going to be a GM head coach combo for him. So that place where he's heading has to have a vacancy at GM and head coach. Not everybody's going to have that at the end of the season. You may have a vacancy at head coach, but you probably won't have one at, GM. So the fact that we'll have both, the fact that the Chargers may have both, the fact that the Raiders already have both, puts those 3 teams into focus. Now, again, we'll see what ultimately happens with other teams, whether they decide to move them from their coach, their GM, one or the other, or both. That remains to be seen. But that's why those 3 teams kind of stand out, because we know those 3 teams, more likely than not, if they move on from their head coach, they're going to move on from their GM as well. The Raiders have already done both. So Washington is going to come up, whether we like it or not. He's seen Sam Howell up close and personal. He knows Sam can play. I don't know. He probably would have loved the defense a lot better with Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Obviously, those guys are gone. That doesn't bother me any. I don't want him anywhere near the organization. I don't want him picking the players. That's another thing. Belichick has been horrible picking players. That's one of the knocks on Bill Belichick. Free agency and in the draft. He has been horrendous. Okay? It's part of the reason why these Patriots teams post-Brady haven't been very good. It's because he hasn't done a good job of, and even when Brady was there, he didn't do a really good job. Brady cleaned up a lot of his messes, frankly. And they were really good at getting veteran players who were really good, i.e. Corey Dillon and LeGarrette Blount and Rodney Harrison and Junior Seau and Randy Moss. They were great at getting those veteran players that were cast-offs from other places who still had good football left in them to come in and buy into the Patriot way. They were really good at that as well. But developing talent, drafting talent, finding guys that aren't, bona fide superstars, maybe on the back end of their careers, he was horrible at finding those guys. 2 things Belichick is really good at, right? Identifying elite cornerbacks, right? Identifying guys that can play in this league at a high level at the cornerback position, whether that's from somewhere else, Stephon Gilmore, Darrelle Revis, Aqib Talib, or drafting those guys. Okay, J.C. Jackson, Ty Law. I don't know if they drafted Ty Law. I think when he got there, Ty Law was already there, but he took Ty Law to another level. Asante Samuel, he did draft. He has an eye for what an NFL corner, an elite NFL corner looks like. And he also has an eye for guys that fit into his scheme that didn't necessarily fit somewhere else, i.e. Kyle Van Noy, right? He finds those kinds of guys all the time, makes them really good players for him, and that's been one of the best things he's been able to do, right? So there's some pros and some cons. We don't want anything to do with Belichick, but let's move all of that aside because we've already had that conversation. We kind of are on the same page. Most of us are. There's still some of you out there that, 10% of you or so that want Belichick here, and that's fair too. You're entitled to your opinion, right? I want nothing to do with him, and I think most of you feel the same way. However, it's less about what we want. It's more about what the Harris Group is looking for and what their MO says. Now, the only guy I'm really focusing on here is Josh Harris. What is his track record? Okay? Because everybody else, they're minority shareholders. While they have input, he has the final say. So I want to look at what his track record says, how he reacts in these situations, what he does when he gets to an organization. And the first thing I wanted to look at was the Philadelphia 76ers. They were in kind of a similar spot to where we are, rich history, falling on hard times, needed a spark. You take over in that franchise, and they're kind of going nowhere fast. And what he did was he just let it breathe, right? Doug Collins was the coach when he got there. He didn't fire Doug Collins. He let him rock for 2 additional years. He didn't move on from Doug Collins until 2013. And then when he got rid of Doug Collins, he could have went out and sought after a great NBA coach with championship pedigree and say, hey, let's go win a title. That's not what he did. He promoted Bruce, I think it was, what's my man, Brown. It's not Bruce Brown. I don't think it's Bruce Brown. But I know his last name is Brown. I remember him being the coach for like 6-7 years, right? And that was his first NBA head coaching gig as well. So what I'm trying to convey to you is I don't think it's a Josh Harris move to go out and get the flashy, shiny item that could potentially be a quick fix. I don't see him as that kind of guy. I see him as a process-oriented guy. I see him as a guy that is going to be patient, let this thing kind of work itself out, put the right people in place, and let them do their jobs. I don't see him trying to skip steps, essentially, is what I'm saying. He doesn't strike me as a skip steps type of guy. Now, this is different than the NHL and the NBA, right? This is the NFL. This is the big show, and he might want to come in and immediately make a splash. There's no bigger splash you can make as a owner than bringing in the 6-time winning, 6-time Super Bowl winning, one of the best coaches ever in the NFL's history, Bill Belichick, into your organization as your GM/head coach. I don't think that's the right move. And if you're looking to reinvigorate this fan base, I don't think that's the move that you want to go with. Now, you know what we're going to do if that's the move that they decide to do? Guess what we're going to do? We're going to fall in line because that's what we do. We'll be pissed off initially. And then just like when they traded for Carson Wentz, we're going to convince ourselves that this is the right move somehow, some way, right? So let's just hope that his history repeats itself and that his track record that precedes him continues, which is, hey, I'm going to play this thing out. I'm going to play this thing out. I'm going to allow the guys that I put in place to make smart decisions. He's already went and got Eugene Shin. I see him going out, finding a GM. And that will tell the story right there, is if they go out and they find themselves an actual GM, they're not hiring Bill Belichick. If they don't hire a GM, Bill Belichick is definitely in play, right? I don't think Bill Belichick's going to end up here. That's my guess. Just being honest with you. Doesn't seem like a Josh Harris type move, okay? He seems to be level-headed. He seems to be a guy that's going to do everything the right way. He seems to have a philosophical approach to how he goes about these organizations that him and his groups take over. And so I think he's going to hire a GM. That GM is going to hire a head coach. And then we're going to go through this process of figuring everything out. That's what I see happening. That's what should happen. And that's what I think is ultimately going to happen. But trust me, it's going to be a rocky 2.5 months or so left. as we go through this whole process, because guess what? We're going to be one of the first teams brought up when they start talking about Bill Belichick and him landing on his feet and what his next destination is going to be. If Daniel Snyder were still here, I would definitely say that would be possible. But Belichick would never want to come here if Snyder were still here. So we wouldn't have to worry about any of that. It's different now because, again, we got the draft capital, we got the quarterback. Things are starting to look up for us. And I'm telling you, this is going to be an appealing job for someone. All right. With what the resources that we have available, you got a quarterback, and this whole quarterback on a rookie contract thing is really being overdone because Sam literally has one more year of being on that rookie deal. Okay, if Sam's good again next year, you have to then pay him after next season. So the whole notion that, hey, we got a quarterback on a rookie deal, you got to take advantage of it and strike while the iron's hot. That ship sailed. He's not a first round pick. There's no fifth year option to lean on. Okay, so if he's good again next year, you have to pay him after next year. So there's no real advantage here with Sam in terms of, unless you're going to win next year. Okay, there's no real advantage to having Sam on the rookie deal because he's not a first round pick. That usually applies to first round picks because you have that extra year. You can pay them after their fourth year, pick up their fifth year option. That exists. That option doesn't exist with Sam as a fifth round pick. You got to pay him after year 3. So that's not really something that you bake into the equation. Oh, we got a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract and that's going to help. Now, you got to be prepared in your mind mentally that we're going to have to pay Sam after the 2024 season. You got to pay Sam if he is what we think he is. So I'll just say this. Prepare yourself. And I always try to give you guys words of wisdom. Like in the offseason, hey, train your brain to make sure that you don't entertain all of the nonsense that's going to be put out there because people need clicks in the offseason. So there's going to be a lot of bad literature out there. Make sure that you don't waste your brain space on some of that stuff. I always try to give you warnings about that stuff. I'm just going to warn you right now, okay? We're going into the season of, if our season is over and it's really trending towards that already, our name is going to come up when Belichick's name comes up because, again, they're looking for destinations where they know new GM, new coach. We're one of them. The Raiders are one of them. Again, they may already have the guys that they're going to hire in Vegas already in place, but that is currently a vacancy. GM, head coach in Vegas. And then when you look at the situation in Los Angeles with the Chargers, if they don't turn it around, if they don't make the playoffs, if they don't win a playoff game, Brandon Staley more likely than not will be fired, and so will their GM, Tom Telesco. And if that happens, that's another GM head coaching vacancy that will be available. So those are the 3 teams that I think you're going to hear their names because those seem to be the most obvious right now. But if we have other head coaching changes, will there be a GM vacancy to go along with that head coaching vacancy? I don't know. If Dan Orlovsky is saying that I'm already hearing that where he's going is a done deal, like it's already been sorted out, then it's one of those 3 teams more likely than not. It's one of those 3 teams because those are the only places that know that more likely than not. In the Chargers case, they don't know anything yet. They could win the remaining 7 games on their schedule, or 8 games, whatever the number is for them. I think they've only played 9 games to this point because they had a bye week. They can win the remaining 8 games on their schedule and go to the AFC Championship game. Then they're not firing anybody. But the likelihood is they're not going to do that. And there will be changes. And so they may be in the mix. But if you know their history, the Spanos don't spend money on the head coaching position. So they're more likely to hire some young, cheap assistant and bring that guy in here, find a GM. And again, that varies on how much you have to pay a GM, but they're not going to look to break the bank there. They never do. Okay? It's between us and probably the Raiders. All signs point to us, and we're going to have to deal with that. We're going to have to deal with that. But knowing Belichick, he probably would prefer Las Vegas, because they got the defensive pieces already. Okay? They got Derwin James. Now they're going to have to do some things with like Khalil Mack and some of the other guys because they got a bunch of contracts. They can't handle all of them, but he's already got, Joey Bosa, and he's already got Derwin James, and he's got, all of these young players, that can run. Like all they really need in Los Angeles is somebody to put it all together for him. And he's got Justin Herbert. Like I know, but everybody else thinks Sam is the guy. Belichick can't be sure that Sam's the guy. He thought Mac Jones was the guy after year one. Look at what has happened to Mac Jones. You can't be sure about Sam. He knows Justin Herbert's the guy. Wherever he goes, they need to already have an established quarterback. That's why I don't think it's going to be us. But we'll see. One thing's for sure, our name's going to come up, so don't get too riled up when you hear Belichick and you hear Washington's name attached to him, because it's supposed to be. We're one of 3 places right now that may have a GM and a head coach vacancy at season's end, and that matters when you're talking Bill Belichick. So just mentally prepare yourself. I wouldn't put too much stock into it. He may ultimately end up here, okay? It may be us, unfortunately. But, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Just know, and as I say that, Sean Payton said he was approached by a potential ownership group to coach Washington. Could it have been Josh Harris? If so, that means he might be in the market for a guy like Bill Belichick, a former Super Bowl winning head coach. If he didn't disclose, did Sean Payton, he did not disclose who that, group was. Could have been Jeff Bezos if he was interested. Could have been some Fertitta or somebody else that might have been interested. My money's on Josh Harris. It was Josh Harris that reached out to him and said, hey, if we get this bid and you're not coaching, we'd be interested. Well, he took a job before they could, do that. And I don't blame Sean Payton for taking a job. You can't wait on the Harris group and everything to clear. But, or maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it wasn't him. My guess is it's not Belichick. It's not going to be Belichick. We'll see. Lot of scuttlebutt, and it's going to be a lot of back and forth, and you're just going to have to deal with it. Okay? You're just going to have to deal with it. So let's get to in other news, and I want to start with, we're going to go around the NFC East here in a second, but I want to start by making a social media maneuver real quick. And, from time to time, you guys send some thought-provoking stuff. I told you there's so many times where I want to dive into some of your comments because they are comments that I think are worthy of a discussion. And, usually we just don't have enough time for whatever reason. It's a slow Tuesday here, and I think it's fitting to bring this up because I was thinking about this on Sunday night after the loss to the Seahawks because it sort of felt like finality, and I talked about that Monday, and that was part of the theme of Monday's show, which was that loss to Seattle kind of felt like finality, right? Felt like the final nail in the season's coffin, but not just that, the final nail in Ronald Rivera and his regime's coffin as well, because they needed to win. So I think a lot of times football trumps all. The actual games trump everything. And a lot of people talk tough during the offseason, like they about that life. And then the season happens, and all that shit they were talking in the offseason goes out the window, and they got this one-track mind, they want to win, and they forget about all the things we talked about in the offseason. And it's so easy to have that happen. I myself am guilty of that at times, but I've never lost sight of the fact that we got new ownership. We got a new lease on life. I asked you guys a poll question before the season started, okay? what was the most important thing about this upcoming season? And for most of us, we wanted to win. And I told you guys, I thought Ronald Rivera was going to win this year because I expected Sam to be good. And while I was not confident in the defense, I didn't expect them to be one of the worst in football. I just thought they would be middle of the pack, right? I didn't think they were going to be top 10 again. I didn't think they would be one of the best third down defenses again. And they actually are playing solid third down defense. But I didn't think they would be up around the best in the league in terms of, points given up, yards, all of that good stuff. All the metrics that we use to decipher whether a defense is good or not. I didn't think we would be in the top 10 of any of that stuff. But I did say to myself, and this is the whole falling victim to prey of the Carson Wentz thing. Hey, just give me what you gave Indianapolis the year before and we'll be fine. Of course, he didn't do that. Just give me what you gave us last year, defense, and we'll be fine, right? And you know what? Doesn't even have to be the full year. Right? Just give me what you gave us in the back end of last year. And we'll call it even. Just give us the back end of the season, which was better than the front end, but it's no here nor there. Of course, they couldn't do that. And every year with Jack, every other year is bad, right? First year was great. Second year was terrible. Third year was great. Fourth year is terrible, right? Sort of like how we play in the season. Week 1, week 2, odd weeks are terrible. Even weeks are really good. Anyway, I said that right. Even weeks are usually pretty good for this team. The odd weeks are the ones where we usually struggle. Anyway, we didn't get that, so hence we're 4-6. And it's funny though. I was reminded of something by a tweet that I saw today from Tom Lavero, a story that he wrote. I don't know how that ended up on my timeline. Somehow it did. And last year, this time, Ronald was asked why this team was struggling, as opposed to the rest of the division. Because we were in last, the Giants were over 500. The Eagles, obviously the Cowboys were really good. The division as a whole was really good last year. And by this time last year, we were good too. We had gotten hot. We were heading into the Philadelphia game here. We were I think we were one game under 500 at this point, heading into the Philadelphia game last year, if I'm not mistaken, because the Philly game, if I'm not mistaken, was week 10. So we would have played that game. We would have gotten a 5-5 on the season. We would win the next two against Houston and Atlanta to get to 7-5. But when asked about why we were where we were, his response was quarterback. Remember that? Everything else was here. Everything was in place. We just needed a quarterback. Which was false because last year the offensive line was shit. And they didn't do too much to fix it this year necessarily. Luckily enough for us, there were some in-house options, Tyler Larson and Chris Paul, that were available to bail us out because the experiment of Andrew Wiley and Nick Gates and Sadiq Charles even not necessarily getting the job done. Okay, that's being modest. They weren't getting the job done, clearly. So luckily enough for them, some in-house options existed. But now the quarterback is getting the job done. What's the excuse now, right? Can't keep telling us it's all about the development of the quarterback. He's developed well enough to the point where we should be no worse than 6-4, probably should be 7-3 right now. So what's the excuse now? Again, not even worth having that conversation. My picture is much bigger than that. The view is way wider than that narrow focus of Ronald Rivera and what he thinks the problem is. I want to read a comment from my guy Joe Rockhead that he left in my DMs earlier today that I find really interesting because so many of you were talking that talk in the offseason and that shit's kind of gone into the background, so to speak. And I just want to remind you of what this season was supposed to be. All right? So let's read this comment real quick. He says, I have thoughts about this last game, but they seem irrelevant considering my thoughts about this whole team/season. Snyder being gone and the Harris group taking over as owners went from the highlight of the year to a footnote. I think many of us felt that the newness would have an all-encompassing spirit-like effect. This is not to say that it isn't happening, but it's not yielding much instant gratification. Like the new seating areas at training camp that thousands of fans attended, or the 3-0 preseason record, or the reports of the excited yelling attention to detail of the new offensive coordinator and his Super Bowl winning offensive scheme. It's like actually having to diet and exercise to lose weight slowly instead of the pill that melts fat away quickly while you sleep. And neither Harris, Magic, Bieniemy, or even Sam Howell is the pill. He said, this is an excerpt from a long-ass soliloquy I posted on Facebook. I think this is so perfect for what I want to discuss with you guys right now. And he summed it up so well. That's so beautifully and eloquently worded. I think this encapsulates everything that I really want to focus in on. So let's talk about it. We talked about this offseason, about what this season was supposed to be about. And for a lot of you, this season is going exactly the way you wanted it to, because you wanted nothing to do with Rivera before the season started. You were done with him last year. You wanted him fired. He was back. And so your main objective was, after getting rid of Snyder, of course, which already happened, your main objective heading into the season was to make sure that Ronald Rivera wasn't a part of this team's future. You've pretty much done your job at this point. Okay? Mission accomplished. I myself wanted to win, and I knew winning would come at the expense of future growth with this organization because Ronald would be here. And I told you what I thought would happen. I was absolutely flat out wrong. I told you Ronald was going to win 10 games this year. We were going to make it to the playoffs. That was going to get him that final year. He's got 5 years on his contract. That was going to give him that fifth and final year, right? Maybe even an extension. I doubted that. I thought they would just let him go into his 5th year as a lame duck coach. And then he would win big that last. It would feel like that 15-1 season with Carolina, and that was going to keep him here. And then they were going to extend him, which a lot of you did not want to hear. Okay, so obviously that didn't happen, and I'm sort of glad that it didn't, because he's not the answer here. That is abundantly clear. We need fresh new blood in this building, and it can't happen soon enough. That said, I mean, aren't you guys tired of seeing Dan Campbell go to Detroit and turn it around? I just love Dan Campbell. That's the kind of guy we need, right? You see Antonio Pierce, I'm not sure he's what I'm looking for, right? He's a little too old school in his approach. However, that's the kind of guy that you're looking for. A guy that's a leader of men, young, in tune to the players, and gets it. That's what we're looking for. That's what the Dolphins have in Mike McDaniel. That's what the 49ers have, even though Kyle Shanahan's a little bit older. That's what they have in Kyle Shanahan, right? And we can go on and on around the league. Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, and, all these younger coaches. Mike Tomlin is one of my favorites, and Mike's still relatively young, even though he's been a coach forever. Remember, Mike Tomlin was the youngest coach in NFL history, right? Sean McVay, young coach, energetic. That's what you're looking for. So that's what we want. And Ron is not that. But when we sat here before the season started, the message was clear. No matter what happens this season, no matter what, we're playing with house money, gang. We already won our Super Bowl. Nobody wants to hear that in November. Okay, that's why I said when the games start, all of the shit we talked about in March and April and May and June and July and even August, all of that shit fades to black. Once the ball kicks off in September and they start to count and they start putting tally marks in the left and right hand column, all the shit that we talked about for 5 to 6 months in the offseason about how, we've been rejuvenated and this season is house money because there's nothing you can do to hurt us. We're machines, jerk. We got rid of Daniel Snyder. It's a new day. All of that shit went away when they started playing games and we started losing, more than we win. It all came rushing back. The frustration, it's almost like Dan is still here, so to speak. But it's not. And that's what I want to remind you. Like, some of you guys are doom and gloom and, you're not really feeling the love right now because we're not winning. But keep in mind, this is a part of the process. And we said this during the season. If this thing doesn't go well, just remember, the best thing that could have happened to us has already occurred. We got new ownership. We got a new lease on life. And then I even took it a step further and I said, hey, if this shit goes off the rails, you should be focused in on Sam Howell and his development and trying to see if he is the quarterback of the future or not. Or at least does enough to say, hey, he should get another shot next year. And let's see what he can do. And let's see if he can follow up with an encore performance from the year prior that leads us to believe that we got our guy. And a lot of you agree with that. So remember, the poll that I put out there, the first answer, the one with the highest percentage, was you wanted to win 10 games and make the playoffs. Okay, 10 plus games. All right, which that should have been the answer because the name of the game is winning. No one wants to show up losing every single week. But the second answer with the most votes that I was excited about because I wasn't sure if you guys were going to see it this way was, hey, let's make sure Sam Howell is the guy, right? If we can't win, and I think the number was 9-8, missed the playoffs barely, but Sam establishes himself as a franchise quarterback type of guy. Not necessarily the guy, but he's the type of guy you can build around. And that was the second highest, percentage answer. And that made me smile because that let me know you guys got it. Now, here we are. That scenario is being presented to us. We're not going to win 10 games. That we don't even have a path really to 9 at this point. It's not impossible. 10 is impossible because you would have to essentially run the table. With the schedule we have left, that ain't happening. Okay? So 10 is out of the window. 9 isn't impossible. It's just highly unlikely at this point. The number is either 7 or 8 at this point, and 6 isn't too far-fetched either. But I think the number is more likely than not 7, right, when it's all said and done. We're a 7-win team, okay? And what's sort of frustrating in all of that is Sam would be getting more attention if we were winning, because even though we try to convince ourselves winning isn't a quarterback stat, it is. It's always going to be. No one's going to look at a linebacker and say, hey, this team is 12-13 with this guy at linebacker. Nobody gives a shit. But they're going to do that when it comes to the quarterback. Like Sam's record right now as a starter is 5-6. Everybody's going to know that because he's the starting quarterback. You want to know why everybody's talking about C.J. Stroud? Sam's playing just as well as C.J. Stroud. Sam doesn't have that many more starts than C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud has started 9 games in his NFL career. Sam started 11. They're not that dissimilar. Sam's putting up better numbers than C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud's team is 5-4, though, and they just went on the road in a hostile environment and beat one of the best teams that we thought were playing at the time in Cincinnati on the road in their building. So you know what people are going to start doing? They're going to start talking about C.J. Stroud. Why? Because they're winning football games. We're not. So you want Sam to get that credit. You want Sam to have that clout, but they're not going to give it to him because he's not winning football games. But that's besides the point. I want to stick to the topic at hand, which is I just want everybody to keep everything in its proper perspective. No matter how the rest of this season goes, we're in great shape. Hold your head up. You may not love the team name. You may not love the uniforms. And those may not change for the foreseeable future. Honestly, I don't give a shit. Some of you care about that a lot more than I do. Bless your heart. And I hope whatever you want the team to do, they do that, right? I'm focused in on trying to build a bully, right? Trying to build a winner. Getting Sam to be the answer at quarterback is a huge step in that direction. Finding the right GM, finding the right head coach, all things that are essential to the success of this franchise moving forward and any consistency that we're looking to have. But above all else, we're under new management, guys and gals. Understand that this season was the cherry on top. Okay? Nothing trumps the news that we got in June and then was officially made official in July. There's nothing that can trump that for us this season. Okay? We have a shot to have a shot. There's hope that's been restored. Some of that has been lost. Some of the luster and the shine of Josh Harris and his group, it's lost. Look, sellout crowd week 1, right? Joe Rockhead illustrated it beautifully. Week 1, the excitement, the buzz, it was palpable. You could cut it with a knife. It was so thick. That's all gone now. A lot of that can be blamed on Rivera and Jack Del Rio and the lack of success for this team. But don't lose sight of the fact that we got a new ownership group. We got a bunch of draft capital after some of the moves that we've made. And we may have found our quarterback. You know, I won't put the word may in there. For me, we found our guy. You know what it is.
New Howell order.
I just want you guys to keep everything in its proper perspective. This season isn't an abject disaster and a failure. From a wins and loss perspective, sure it is. But the bigger picture is we're not trying to find a way to scratch and claw our way into the playoffs for 1 year. And I'd love it if they went on a Rivera run to finish up, get to 9-8, somehow find their way into the 7th seed. I still want them gone, right? I still don't want them back. So at the end of the day, I just want you to keep everything in its proper perspective. Do you want the one little, run that's cute, that's not sustainable, and, you're trying to backdoor your way into the playoffs every year because you're losing games to teams like Chicago and the Giants? Or do you want to fix this thing and get it right so that we don't have to worry about that moving forward and that we are a triple P moving forward? That should be the goal. And that's where we're heading. And so understand that while it is disappointing to lose and we want this team to win, that's the small picture. The big picture is we got a new ownership group. We may have found our quarterback. We got draft capital. This is a good situation. It's the healthiest it's been in forever. The arrow is still pointing up. I just want to remind you of that. The trajectory of this organization is still pointing upwards. Don't let anybody lie to you and tell you otherwise. Shit's heading in the right direction. We just got to find the right people to maximize what we currently have and what we could potentially have with the assets that we currently have, which is cap space and draft capital. We just got to find the right people. And if we do, what's stopping us from being Detroit and turning shit around and being one of the best teams in the league in 2 years? Hell, what's stopping us from being the Texans right now, who was supposed to be bad, but right now is in the playoffs if it were to start today? What's stopping us from being Dallas or Philadelphia next year? We got the quarterback. Our guy can compete with their guy, right? We got the quarterback. We just got to get the right guys in place. Just remember, and this is all I'm looking to convey to you. Because as Joe Rockhead said, it's almost like it's a footnote that we got new ownership. No, that shit should still be at the forefront of your mind. It should still be the most important thing. What that group does over the next 3 months is going to be much bigger than anything that happens over the next month and a half. The direction of this organization is going to be determined, at least for the short term, 5 to 7 years, is going to be determined by the moves that they make in the next 3 months. Choose wisely. That's all we can say to them. Choose wisely. But the arrow is pointing up. Don't forget that. And that's what I wanted to make sure that we were still, because a lot of you'll tell me in the offseason, oh, I can take the lumps. I'm ready. And then we get in the season and it's fire everybody. This organization sucks. Nothing has changed. We're the same old Commanders. And we're not the same old Commanders. The product on the field may feel like that, but Daniel Snyder's no longer here. It's not the same anymore. It's different. And we do have a quarterback. It's different. And we do have draft capital. And we do have cap space. It's different. People actually want to come here. It's different. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. Let's take a quick trip around the NFC East and we'll get out of here. So, the Giants and Cowboys played. The Eagles were off on a bye. And the Cowboys destroyed the Giants just like we thought they would. The Cowboys had a bye week last week and they got another bye this week, right? I hate that they have a bye right before they play us. That shit sucks. But technically speaking, we should have a bye too. The question is, will we treat it like a bye or not? The Cowboys took advantage of their bye week last week against the Giants, beating them 49-17, or whatever the score ended up being. CeeDee Lamb continues his assault on the NFL. It seems like these receivers in the division are taking turns going ape shit. It was A.J. Brown. Now it's CeeDee Lamb. He's on a torrid pace. When's our guy going to get a turn, right? Not going to happen more likely than not with this group here. But nonetheless, Dallas is gearing up to take on Washington. And they'll be coming off of essentially, 2 weeks of rest when they see us on Thanksgiving. Hopefully, we'll be coming off of a week of rest ourselves, but nothing's ever easy for us. We're going to have to strain to the finish to beat the Danny DeVito-led New York Giants, more likely than not. But they've got Carolina coming up. Dallas looks damn good. They're clicking on all three phases right now. Even that loss at Philadelphia seems to have boosted their confidence a bit. I don't like where this is heading. We play literally the two teams that we saw on Sunday, Dallas and the Giants. We play them the next 2 weeks. So the Giants are awful and the Cowboys are really good. And, we can compete with both of them. We should be able to beat the Giants and we should be competitive against Dallas and we should have a shot in that game. But, we'll see. The Giants may end up with Caleb Williams. Understand that the Arizona Cardinals, who won on Sunday, and Kyler Murray is back, they're going to win football games. They're not going to end up in... I don't even know if the Arizona Cardinals are going to end up with a top 5 pick when it's all said and done, now that Kyler Murray is back. So the only team in their way, and they'll be picking number 1, is the Chicago Bears. But the Bears have Justin Fields. They have a decision to make. Obviously, Fields should be back this week, and he's pretty much auditioning for his job because the Bears are going to have 2 of the top 5 picks in the draft. The number 1 overall pick from Carolina is going to belong to them because Carolina's not winning another game this season. And they're going to have the number 1 overall pick. And the Giants are right there. They'll probably have the second, no worse than the 3rd pick in the draft. Right? And if that is in fact the case, they don't have to do much to get to number 1 if they truly want Caleb Williams, if the Bears aren't going to take him. So just prepare yourself. If you think Caleb Williams is this all-world quarterback and he's a franchise changer and all this and that, he might end up being in this division. You got to start hoping for some Giants victories. I don't want them beating us, but I'd like it if they beat somebody else down the road. 1 or 2 games and just don't put them in a position to get Caleb Williams. But if they get him, they get him. I don't give a shit. It's at this point, I always tell you, I don't really worry about what everybody else is doing. I just try to worry about what we're doing. If we take care of what we got to take care of, we'll end up being fine. But I don't see the Giants winning very many more games. They stink, man. They are so bad. I mean, it's not even funny. I was talking to my dad. I was talking to Boss Man the other day, frying him up for his Week 10 picks. And he's like, and I told him last week, when we were talking about all the games, I said, y'all got a bye week. And, he laughed and he was like, oh, because we playing the Giants. I said, yeah. He said, yeah, we going to beat the shit out of them. I said, you are. I expect you to score 40 again. And sure enough, they scored 40 again. Hell, they had 42 points after 3 quarters. Okay. My biggest gripe with Dallas in the game was, why the hell was CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons and some of your better players still in the game, with 8 minutes to go in a 42-10 blowout? They should have been done after 3 quarters. That should have been a preseason game for them. But I digress. If one of those guys had gotten hurt, the Cowboys fans would have lost their minds. I don't really know what the hell their head coach is thinking about sometimes. But again, that's no here nor there. That's not my problem. So we'll see those two teams each of the next 2 weeks. Giants this week, Cowboys, the short, quick turnaround Thanksgiving afternoon. And that's, to me, for all intents and purposes, that's the season. You don't beat the Giants, it's over, and I think heads roll right then and there. Like, go to the guillotine, put your hands inside, heads have to be chopped off and start rolling right then and there, right? You take care of the Giants like you're supposed to, quick turnaround Dallas. If you can somehow manage to beat the Cowboys, we can start talking about potentially having a season again. You lose to Dallas, it's pretty much over because I don't see you beating Miami, right? I don't see you beating Dolphins. I don't see you beating Dallas either, but that's no here nor there. Anyway, just a little quick trip around the NFC East, and the Eagles have a colossal matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. Both teams are coming off a bye. Bart Scott can't wait. That one should be a lot of fun. Anyway, I digress. Let's get out of here. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. I look forward to chopping it up with some of you later on this evening. For the rest of you, I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be live. If you got anything that you want to discuss, some of the stuff we talked about today, some of the stuff that'll be up there tomorrow, we'll hear from Ronald Rivera, we'll hear from Sam Howell, we'll have our injury report, we'll start turning our attention to the Giants, etc., etc. Anything under the sun, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So get all those comments, questions, concerns, all that stuff ready. We'll have a dialogue tomorrow night. Anyway, I digress. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Until next time, you guys, take care. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.